From the brilliant mind that gave us great films such as the Dark Knight trilogy, one of my favorite action science fiction films in Inception, and the single greatest science fiction family drama of all time in Interstellar, we got the return of Christopher Nolan giving us his very first biographical drama focusing on one of the most important people in human history. Now the question is, does Christopher Nolan deliver the goods or does he drop the ball? We'll be discussing that and much more. What's going on, movie fans, and welcome back to my channel. Elliot back again with a brand new review, and today we're discussing the new Christopher Nolan Oppenheimer. Now, I got a chance to see this last night, and if you saw my out-of-theater reaction or if you follow me on social media, I had a lot to say about the film, and today we're breaking it all down in my spoiler-free review, but let's talk about all that in the comments below. So speaking of Christopher Nolan, let's kick things off by talking about how I feel like this is a cinematic achievement. This to me is filmmaking at its absolute finest and what I believe to be Christopher Nolan's best work to date. Oppenheimer is unlike anything Christopher Nolan has done before, and I would argue that this is not only his most experimental film to date, but also his most character-driven film. He has a very clear vision that is laser focused on one thing, and that is telling this very complex and dense story surrounding one of the most important people in human history. Now, at this point of his career, I don't think he has anything to prove. I think Christopher Nolan is one of the best filmmakers in history, if you ask me. But that doesn't stop him from redefining what he's capable of doing, and he proves in his film that his greatness is ever growing. Nolan's work in this film is remarkable. I am just impressed by what he was able to accomplish. But speaking of impressed, Otima is one of my favorite cinematographers, and his extraordinary ability to crafting shots and making you feel a part of the scenes is unmatched. Now, when it comes to his work in Oppenheimer, there are just some scenes in this film that I feel like are the best frames you'll see all year. And when it comes to showcasing the devastating creation of the bomb, there are moments that I feel like it was just mesmerizing. It was things that were terrifying to look at, that were horrifying to look at, but they were just all captured in such a beautiful way. Now, switching gears and talking about the sound of the film and transitioning to the composer, which is Ludwig Göransson, he is operating at a level in which I know he's chasing perfection with every opportunity he gets to work with Christopher Nolan, and he has not yet to disappoint. This score is massive, it is bombastic, it is poetic, it is powerful, it is emotionally moving. The use of the violins is so genius to me in this score, and the reason I say that is because there is a tension to the sound that pairs perfectly with the intellect of Robert Oppenheimer, but also the emotional depths of the character. The sound in this film is groundbreaking, and I'm a fan of scores. I love Christopher Nolan scores. I'm thinking about Tenet last year, or a couple years ago was fantastic by Ludwig. I think of the motifs from Hans Zimmer in the Dark Knight trilogy, and my favorite score of all time comes from Interstellar. Hans Zimmer's Stay is my favorite score ever. But when it comes to this movie and focusing on the main score that we get with Oppenheimer, it is so fantastic when we get those most heightened moments, those key moments in the film. I'm not kidding you all when I say this. It was almost like an out-of-body experience when we got certain moments in this film because the score was just so perfect to me. It is masterful work by Ludwig Göransson. But also props to the entire team and the crew that put this movie together, whether it be hair and makeup, the set designers, the extras. Seriously, everyone involved deserves praise. But speaking of praise, their screen time, but just know that every actor seemed to understand what Christopher Nolan was going for, but also understood how much Cillian Murphy was required to do in his role, and you feel like they were there to support him, and they felt that responsibility in supporting him. And when I'm talking about these performances, y'all, the supporting cast all delivered just really great performances, whether it be Benny Safdie, Josh Hartnett, Tom Conti as Einstein, and there's just so many countless other great performances that were just incredible. But focusing a little bit on some of the key players, for example, we have Matt Damon, who plays Leslie Groves, who is the Army engineer who was responsible for directing the Manhattan Project. What I love about Matt Damon's performance of this is it's balance. He has that authoritative role, but also there are moments of respect between him and Oppenheimer. But speaking of respect, y'all, put some respect on Robert Downey Jr.'s name because, and I don't say this in a slight, but I know for a younger generation, a lot of people think of him as just Iron Man, Tony Stark, right? Which I know actors would probably love to be known as one, iconic role throughout their career. And he's great as Iron Man, don't get me wrong. But I like to remind people that before Iron Man, he was a talented individual, and in this film, he showcases what gives him that talent and why he is a generational talent. He is fantastic in this film as he plays Louis Strauss, who was a part of the AEC and played a very important role in the development of the atomic weapon, but also had a very important relationship with Oppenheimer that carries a lot of weight to the film. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear Robert Downey Jr.'s name come up when it comes to Best Supporting Lead in a film, but I wouldn't be shocked if he won the award. He is that damn good in this movie. But speaking of that damn good, played beautifully by Florence Pugh, and the other is Catherine Oppenheimer, played by the incredible Emily Blunt. They are absolutely brilliant, incredible, but also very impressive performance by both actors. Florence Pugh shares more of the intimate moments with Oppenheimer, showing that more vulnerable side to him, and then Emily Blunt plays his wife, which shows the more family man, another interesting side of the character. So great performances by those two. But I've been saying Oppenheimer a lot, but it is time to shine a light on Cillian Murphy's performance as Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is easily one of the most iconic figures in the 20th century, and Cillian Murphy plays him brilliantly. Oppenheimer's story changed the world by his creation, and Cillian Murphy gives us a beautiful, unique, but also poignant performance as he perfectly captures the genius of Oppenheimer, but also guides us into the terrors that was filled in his mind after knowing this creation would change the nuclear landscape forever. Now, to me, I compared this film to a landmine, right? Where if you have one misstep, it can misguide you off this trail. But it's Cillian Murphy's performance that guides you through his sublime performance and takes you through this very layered and complex, extremely complex life. No doubt in my mind that we're looking at the front runner for best lead performance in the film. Cillian Murphy gives a lifetime performance that was absolutely fantastic. So a couple key moments before we get into some of my criticisms that I want to bring up here. One of them being, I found the story to be so interesting because it is a very non-linear story, as we know from Christopher Nolan, and it could be difficult at times that we'll talk a little bit about later, but I was still so enamored with the scientific elements. I'm not really into politics in films, but I found that element to be interesting, and there's a courtroom drama that had elements of A Few Good Men that I found to be fascinating. There are just so many great elements about this film. The pacing, it didn't make it feel like it was a 3-hour movie. Now, when it comes to the tension in the building of the creation of the Trinity, it was so intense and has such a haunting yet powerful and moving effect when you see the actual testing of the bomb, and also the nightmarish scenes when Oppenheimer learns what he's possibly created is a world destroyer was so effective. Now, two more things I want to mention here in regards to like scenes that really stood out to me. There are so many great scenes within this narrative, but a couple that stand out. One of them was there's a particular moment that we see after 3 years of all their hard work and they actually test the bomb. Incredible scene. But then speaking of incredible, when we see the after effects of what the Trinity was capable of and dropping it in Japan, it is truly devastating. It had me almost getting super emotional just thinking of the real life situation at hand. But when we have a scene with Oppenheimer, he's addressing the scientists and addressing the families of the scientists that are at the Manhattan location. He's talking to them and he's having a nightmare. There's a scene in this film where he sees the effects of the atomic bomb in the room that he's in. Literally a perfect scene. So, man, I can go on and on and on about the pod. Again, it's Christopher Nolan, non-linear storytelling. I'm very used to it, but when it comes to this film, it did take me a minute to get used to all the stuff that we were being thrown at. I mean, we're bouncing from Oppenheimer in his days in college, him falling in love, him being recruited. There's a lot being thrown at you, and for me, it was a little bit overwhelming. Now, it eventually found some good pacing, and you get settled into the story, but for me, the first initial 15, 20 minutes was very overwhelming. Pivoting over some other things that didn't work for me. I praise Christopher Nolan's script because I thought it was great, but there are moments that the dialogue almost felt too polished. It almost seemed too perfect. What I mean by that is, if you have seen a Aaron Sorkin's film and a film that he's a great writer. But a lot of his movies, everyone's like on an 11. Everyone's the smartest person in the world. And now keep in mind, as I'm referring to Oppenheimer, of course, we're dealing with these most intelligent scientist has ever walked on Earth, so I get the intellect's going to be on another level, but sometimes it just feels like it wasn't as authentic in like natural conversations. Like everyone's saying these thought-provoking, profound things without really kind of taking in the gravity of what they're saying. So again, it felt almost too polished, and if you kind of know what I mean, and if you see the film, you'll know what I'm talking about, or you might not. But last point I want to mention as far as my criticisms go, to me, there is a little bit of me issue and also a story issue. Now, addressing the me of it all, I'm not a historian, I'm sure not a scientist, and I'm not a politician. When I say that, I'm going into the facts that we have a lot of terminologies, a lot of jargon, a lot of, things being said that kind of went over my head. Now, some of it made sense, but some of it didn't. Now, that boils me down, bringing it to the film of it all. Again, it's science, it's politicians, we have a lot of political things going on. I felt the film could have did a little bit of a better job of explaining certain elements of the movie. Again, some of you all might disagree that are maybe scientists or politicians or what have you, but I feel like the film could have did a little bit better job of making things be spoken in layman terms. Some of y'all in the comments like, you idiot, you didn't get it? But no, it's just not throughout the entire film, but there are moments where I feel like, man, this is going over my head. But I will say, it's the performances and the way that I was able to, I understand what they're saying, not fully, but I can grasp on the idea of what they're getting at. So that's something that I wanted to bring up. But one last final point. Now, I felt like after the creation of the Trinity and the effects of the Trinity, that is the climax of the movie to me. But then there's like another 30 to 45 minutes to the film, probably close to 40 minutes if I'm being honest. And the last 40 minutes is like a courtroom drama. We're dealing with the Cold War. We have a trial, or they don't call it a trial, but we have these legal proceedings going on with Oppenheimer, people trying to get him out of the science industry, people trying to tear him down, take away his legacy and his name. The scenes were great because there's some great acting going on. There's some great stuff going on. But again, 30, 40 minutes prior to that, I feel like that was the climax, and it's kind of like we're coming down from that high momentum. So again, nothing wrong with those scenes. It just didn't hit the same high notes for me as we got with the bomb, how it was used, the after effects of that. So one more thing I will mention, though, before we wrap up. Speaking of the ending, and I won't give it away, obviously, it's a true story, but I won't give away the actual ending, but I will say the last scene is haunting. I want to prepare you all because it kind of gives you an idea of the future, and it does not look bright. I'll just say that. So I will prepare you all. It's an ending that's going to stick with you because it definitely stuck with me. So those are my main pros. Those are my main cons. Before we wrap this thing up, I want to thank you all for sticking on to this point of review. If you are still here and if you enjoy what I had to say so far, consider hitting that like button, sharing today's review, leaving your thoughts in the comments, and of course, consider subscribing to the channel. Look, I am very aware that some people will not enjoy the long runtime. Some people will not enjoy the story and a lot of the different story plots that we get. And I get all that, right? But for me, it's the technical side of this film. It's the direction. It's the performances. It's the lasting effect of the story. And that is the reason why I am giving it that 5-star treatment, because it really worked for me. But again, that's just me. But now I want to talk to you all at home. Let me know in the comments what worked, what didn't work. Where does this fall on Christopher Nolan's filmography? I'm going to probably make a YouTube short in a couple days giving you all my rankings of all his movies. But let's just say that 5 out of 5 treatment, there's only 3 films that I gave 5 out of 5 in his filmography, and this is definitely top tier for me. So it is one of my favorite films so far this year. But again, I want to know your thoughts in the comments. I want to thank you all for supporting today's video. If you enjoyed it, before we wrap this thing up, like I said, hit the like, share, comment below, consider subscribing to the channel. You all have been awesome. Hope you're staying safe. As you can see on the screen, check out my other reviews I've done so far this year. Check out my most recent review, and I'll catch you all on the next video.